The elevator doors slid open at 11:47 p.m., and Marcus Webb stepped into the 42nd floor of Nexus Technologies with a mop cart that squeaked with every third rotation of its left wheel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. He had reported the squeaky wheel to maintenance 6 weeks ago. Nobody had fixed it. Nobody really noticed Marcus at all, which was fine by him. He preferred it that way. He moved through the glass corridors like a ghost, wiping down surfaces, emptying bins, straightening chairs that expensive people had shoved aside in expensive frustration. The 42nd floor housed the Quantum Logistics Division, and tonight it smelled like cold coffee and panic. Marcus had been cleaning this building for 3 years, and he knew the smell of panic well. It had been living on this floor for 11 days straight. He knew because he had watched the team grow more hollow-eyed with each passing night, watched the whiteboards fill with increasingly desperate equations, watched takeout containers multiply like evidence of surrendered home lives. He knew what they were working on too, not because anyone told him, but because Marcus listened, and Marcus understood more than anyone in that building could have imagined. The Nexus quantum routing system was supposed to revolutionize real-time logistics, management for the defense sector. A $100 million contract demonstration was scheduled in 4 days. The system kept collapsing under load simulation, rerouting data into cascading loops that caused complete network failure. 14 engineers had been rotating shifts. The lead developer, a brilliant young woman named Dr. Priya Anand, had barely slept in a week. Marcus had emptied her bin 3 nights in a row and found crumpled pages filled with algorithmic attempts, each one crossed out with increasing force. Tonight the floor was empty. The team had been sent home by the CEO himself, a sharp-jawed man named Richard Cole, who had paced these halls that evening, saying they needed fresh eyes in the morning. The whiteboard in Conference Room B still held the latest failed framework, red marker underlining the stress test result. System failure, loop detected. Routing collapse. Marcus parked his cart outside the glass wall and looked in. He told himself he was just checking if the room needed cleaning. There were 3 empty mugs and a pizza box, so technically it did. He pushed open the door and began collecting the mugs. And then, almost involuntarily, his eyes went to the whiteboard. He stood very still for a long moment. His jaw tightened slightly, the way it did when he was thinking hard. The way his daughter Lily said made him look like a cartoon professor. Lily was 8 years old and asleep right now in their apartment, 14, blocks away under a blanket covered in cartoon rockets. She wanted to be an astronaut. Marcus had been the one to explain orbital mechanics to her using a tennis ball and a lamp. He had once been Dr. Marcus Webb, a computational systems researcher at the Georgia Institute of Technology, specializing in network flow theory. That was before the accident that took his wife, before the grief that swallowed 2 years of his life whole, before he emerged on the other side with a daughter to raise and a pride. He had quietly sat down to do whatever work, kept them stable and together. He had never told anyone here. There was no reason to. He set the mugs down on the table and stood before the whiteboard with his arms folded. The error was not subtle once you saw it, but you had to know where to look. The routing architecture assumed symmetrical load distribution across nodes, which was elegant in theory, but their real-world node configuration was asymmetrical by design to account for geographic latency differences. The algorithm was essentially trying to pour water equally into containers of different sizes and then acting surprised when some overflowed. The loop wasn't a bug. It was the system correcting desperately for a foundational misalignment between the model and reality. Marcus picked up a blue marker. He hesitated for exactly 4 seconds. Then he began to write. He did not rewrite their entire framework. He respected the work too much for that. Instead, he annotated, redirected, inserted a weighted distribution modifier into the 3rd tier, routing logic, and restructured the feedback sensitivity threshold so the system would self-correct gradually rather than catastrophically. He drew a clear diagram beside their existing one, showing the asymmetrical node map and how the new modifier would interact with it under load. He wrote 3 lines of explanatory logic at the bottom in small, clean handwriting. Then he capped the marker, collected the pizza box and the mugs, turned off the light, and went back to mopping the hallway. At 7:14 the following morning, Dr. Priya Anand walked into conference room B ahead of everyone else, as she always did. Set down her coffee, looked at the whiteboard, and stopped breathing for a moment. She read every word. Then she read it again. By 7:30, Richard Cole was standing beside her doing the same. By noon, the Nexus quantum routing system had passed every single stress test without a single loop error. The demonstration 4 days later was flawless. The contract was signed. It was Richard Cole himself who reviewed the buildings overnight. Security footage and found Marcus pushing a mop cart into conference room B at 11:53 p.m. and leaving 12 minutes later. He called Marcus into his office that afternoon. Marcus sat in the chair across from the CEO, in his grey uniform shirt with the Nexus Cleaning Company logo on the chest, and did not apologize for any of it. Richard Cole looked at him for a long time, and then asked him only one question: why he had never said anything about who he was. Marcus thought about Lily asleep under her rocket blanket, about the lunches he packed every morning, about the school plays he had never missed. Then he said simply that he had been exactly where he needed to be. Richard Cole offered him a position as a senior systems consultant. Flexible hours, school-friendly schedule, salary that reflected what he was actually worth. Marcus accepted. He still sometimes walks the 42nd floor late in the evening, not to clean it, but because thinking is easier when he is moving. And the city lights through those tall windows are beautiful. And soon Lily will be old enough to understand exactly what her father did in a quiet room in the middle of the night, and how sometimes the most important people in any story are the ones nobody thought to look at twice. If this story moved you, if you believe that unseen people carry extraordinary worth, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories, where every story is a reminder that goodness lives in unexpected places.